Hello AmericansChannel. This video is made by free videos from Storyblocks, and these images and video we use just for explanation, and it's free use also.
Jason had meticulously orchestrated every detail of his wedding day, crafting a spectacle of opulence, from the gleaming chandeliers to the handcrafted table napkins, folded with precision. Each element spoke of perfection. After all, this day wasn't just about him saying "I do." It was his ultimate showcase, a chance to flaunt his upgraded life in front of the one person he most needed to see it, his ex-girlfriend Valeria. Jason and Valeria's breakup had been messy, and Jason wanted her to witness his newfound happiness from the front row. As the ceremony began, Jason anxiously scanned the crowd, awaiting Valeria's arrival. When Valeria finally arrived, Jason's confidence wavered. She wasn't alone. His smirk faded, and his face paled as he locked eyes with the unexpected guest at her side. Man tries to humiliate ex by inviting her to wedding. He turns pale when he sees who she came with. Jason, the groom, stood nervously at the wedding venue in a perfectly tailored light brown suit, adjusting his cufflinks anxiously. He took deep breaths, trying to steady his nerves, but his thoughts kept drifting back to Valeria. Does she know why she's here? He wondered. The guests settled into their seats, and the soft hum of conversation filled the air. Jason clenched his jaw, determined to go through with his plan no matter what. His friend Jake approached to give some last-minute encouragement. "You've got this, Jason," Jake said, clapping a hand on his shoulder. "Just focus on Emily and nothing else." Jason nodded, appreciating Jake's attempt to steady him. Despite his anxiety, he managed a smile. "Thanks, man. Couldn't have done this without you." Jake grinned and gave him a reassuring pat before stepping aside to join the other groomsmen. Emily, his bride, was in another room getting ready with her bridesmaids, filled with nervous excitement. There was a videographer taking the pictures and videos for their wedding memories, and he could hear the squeals and giggles of the bridesmaid from far away. The venue was breathtakingly beautiful, decorated with lush floral arrangements and shimmering gold and white decorations. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting a soft glow over the elegant setup. The guests admired the aesthetics, whispering compliments among themselves. The combination of elegance and sophistication turned the venue into a perfect backdrop for Jason and Emily's special day. Everyone was eagerly anticipating the ceremony, unaware of the underlying tension brewing beneath Jason's calm facade. Contrary to what one might expect, Jason's thoughts were consumed by a woman, who unfortunately was not his bride but his ex, Valeria, who he had invited specifically so she could see him happy and successful. He wanted her to witness his perfect day and feel the sting of regret and jealousy as he watched the guests mingling. His eyes kept darting to the entrance, waiting for Valeria's arrival. He savored the thought, imagining the pain in her eyes that would give him the sweet satisfaction of revenge. The wedding preparations continued around him, people chatting away and his friends and parents fretting over the vows and last details. But Jason's head was being assaulted by flashbacks of his and Valeria's tumultuous relationship. Their beginning was filled with passion and excitement, as most love stories go. They attended classes, enjoyed on-campus dates, and sat with each other through all-nighters. But as soon as he moved into Valeria's apartment senior year, things started to go sour. Valeria came from a world of luxury and privilege that Jason never felt he belonged to. Her family's wealth was evident in every aspect of her life, from designer clothes to extravagant dinners. Though Valeria never flaunted it, the unspoken divide between their worlds always loomed large. Jason's insecurities simmered beneath forced smiles and awkward laughter. He recalled feeling out of place at a charity gala hosted by Valeria's family, surrounded by polished professionals. The night only deepened his sense of inadequacy, especially when Valeria received praise for her latest academic achievement. Jason often felt like an accessory in Valeria's world, tagging along to events where he felt judged and scrutinized. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was merely tolerated, a stark contrast to Valeria's celebrated presence. Each gathering left him feeling smaller and more invisible. Jason's jealousy grew in quiet, insidious ways. He remembered when Valeria excitedly landed an internship through her family's connections. Jason offered hollow congratulations, but inside his pride crumbled. Her success only highlighted his own struggles, making him feel like a spectator in her perfect life. Social gatherings were the worst. Valeria moved effortlessly through conversations, always dressed in the high-end clothes, while Jason felt invisible trudging behind in his T-shirt and jeans. Valeria never made him feel insecure about these things. However, that didn't make things better. Jason's frustration boiled over one evening when Valeria mentioned her plans for a postgraduate program abroad. The ensuing argument was a storm of accusations, leaving both of them wounded. Jason's resentment wasn't just about Valeria's wealth, but about his fear of not being enough. Valeria often tried to shower Jason with gifts and expensive clothes, but he hated accepting anything bought with her money. It felt emasculating. Despite his efforts to suppress his insecurities, they seeped into their relationship like poison, turning their passion into simmering tension and unspoken resentment. He often felt like he was competing with Valeria's successes, his own achievements paling in comparison. His pride couldn't handle always being second best. Valeria, oblivious to the depth of Jason's turmoil, continued to thrive. Valeria's family estate was breathtaking, a sprawling lakeside mansion surrounded by lush gardens and serene waters. The grandeur of the place was overwhelming for Jason, who felt like a misfit among the polished, affluent guests. As Jason navigated the weekend, he couldn't ignore the hushed whispers and disapproving glances from Valeria's relatives. He overheard comments about his modest background and unrefined manners, each remark a dagger to his pride. He felt judged small and utterly out of place in their world. Jason tried to keep up appearances, but every interaction felt like a test he was failing. He watched Valeria move effortlessly through conversations, her laughter blending with the hum of the estate's social scene. He envied her ease, her ability to belong where he felt like an outsider. The discomfort came to a head when a valuable family heirloom, a diamond-encrusted pen and penholder belonging to Valeria's grandfather, went missing. The guests were unsettled, and the air grew thick with suspicion. Jason sensed the shift immediately, the way eyes subtly turned toward him as the obvious culprit. Though no one openly accused him, Jason could feel the unspoken blame settling on his shoulder. He saw Valeria's relatives exchange knowing looks. Their voices were low, but not low enough to keep him from catching the insinuations. Each glance and whisper deepened his sense of isolation. Valeria was quick to defend Jason. When someone suggested searching everyone's belongings, she stood firm, her voice steady and commanding. "No one's checking Jason's bags," she had declared, glaring down anyone who dared to challenge her. Jason felt her protectiveness, but it did little to soothe his bruised ego. Instead of feeling comforted by Valeria's defense, Jason felt humiliated. He hated that he needed her to stand up for him, as though he couldn't defend himself. The suspicion from her family, combined with the pity in her eyes, only made him feel smaller and more inadequate. Later that evening, while the estate quieted down, Jason walked into their room to find Valeria rifling through his bag. Jason's heart sank, anger flaring instantly. "What are you doing?" he demanded, his voice sharp with anger. Valeria looked up, startled, holding a charger. "I was just looking for this," she said, her tone calm. But Jason's mind was already spiraling into doubt. "You're lying," Jason snapped, his voice cracking under the weight of his emotion. "You think I took that stupid pen, don't you? You're just like them. Another rich, stuck-up girl who thinks everyone is beneath her." Valeria's eyes widened, shock and hurt flashing across her face. Jason was full on screaming at this point. Valeria tried to explain, but Jason was beyond listening. He pushed her out of the way, trying to leave the room. "You'll never see me as anything but a liar," he continued, his words venomous. "All that pity, your defense, it was all just for show." Unable to bear the weight of his emotions, Jason stormed out of the estate, leaving Valeria in stunned silence. The sting of her perceived betrayal and his own insecurities overwhelmed him, each step away from her house fueled by a mix of anger and humiliation. Hours later, Jason's fury began to cool, replaced by creeping doubt. He lay awake, the memory of Valeria's stricken face haunting him. His words echoed in his mind, harsh and unyielding. Maybe she was just looking for a charger. Had he been too harsh, too quick to judge? The next day, Jason called Valeria to apologize. He tried to explain, to mend the damage with promises that he hadn't meant what he said. But Valeria's voice was cold and distant. She was deeply hurt, not just by his accusations, but by his outburst in front of her family. Valeria refused to take Jason back. She was not only hurt, but also offended that he would scream at her while her parents were in the next room. The humiliation of his public anger had cut deeply beyond what she could easily forgive. Jason's attempt to make amends quickly dissolved into frustration. He felt a mix of regret and mounting pettiness as Valeria stood firm in her decision. Her refusal to forgive him struck a nerve, and Jason's initial regret twisted into a sense of indignation that she wouldn't relent. Jason hung up, his emotions roiling between guilt and anger. Instead of accepting his apology, Valeria's steadfast refusal stoked the fires of his wounded pride. To him, it felt like another rejection, another way in which Valeria's world was closing ranks against him. To make matters worse for Jason, Valeria seemed to move on swiftly, her life flourishing in the wake of their breakup. To him, she appeared unscathed, landing an impressive new job and quickly finding herself in a new relationship. She was initially heartbroken and struggled a lot behind the scenes, but all Jason saw was her seemingly perfect life unfolding without him. Her social media was filled with smiles, successes, and moments that seemed to taunt him, reinforcing his belief that he was easily replaced. To numb the pain, Jason sought solace in a string of casual relationships, none of which offered any real comfort. He moved from one fleeting connection to another, avoiding emotional intimacy as if it were a trap. His heart, still bruised, recoiled from anything that resembled commitment. It was during one of these aimless escapades that Jason met Emily at a work party. She was vibrant, lively, and completely unburdened by the complexities that had haunted Jason's path. They connected instantly, sharing easy laughter and stories that flowed without the weight of history. When Jason met Emily, she was on the brink of getting engaged to her longtime boyfriend, a fact she casually mentioned during their early conversations. At first, Jason didn't mind. He was still lost in his own emotional detachment, seeing Emily as another fleeting distraction. But as they spent more time together, Jason felt a shift. Emily's engagement plans grew increasingly strained as her feelings for Jason intensified. Eventually, Emily made the difficult decision to end her engagement. The choice wasn't easy, but the pull towards Jason was stronger. For Jason, Emily's choice was a validation he desperately needed. He had watched her walk away from her own established future to build something new with him. In Emily's eyes he saw not pity or judgment, but genuine affection, a stark contrast to the shadows of his path. But, despite all his love for Emily, as Jason stood in the venue on his wedding day, his thoughts were completely occupied by Valeria. Jason's guilt from the past was now mingled with a strange sense of validation as he prepared to flaunt his new life in front of her. Guests started arriving at the venue, filling the air with chatter and excitement. The sound of laughter and conversations echoed through the beautifully decorated hall. Jason greeted a few guests, his eyes constantly scanning the entrance. He plastered on a smile, trying to mask his underlying anxiety about Valeria's impending arrival. Jake and Jason went over the seating arrangements one last time, making sure everything was perfect. "Are you sure Valeria's seat is in the best spot?" Jason asked. "Definitely. Trust me," he said, patting Jason on the back. Satisfied, they stepped back to admire the organized rows of chairs, each adorned with a seasonal bouquet. The meticulous planning seemed to pay off. The venue looked stunning, and Jason felt a surge of confidence that everything would go as planned. He took a deep breath to shove the nervousness away. His resolve strengthened, visualizing a future with Emily and brushing aside his worries about Valeria. A murmur among the guests caught Jason's attention as Valeria finally arrived at the venue. Heads turned, conversations paused, and the atmosphere shifted slightly. Jason peeked through a gap in the curtains, his heart racing. Valeria stood at the entrance, scanning the room with an unreadable expression. People whispered, recognizing her, adding to the tension. Jason's fingers drummed nervously against his palm as he awaited the inevitable confrontation, his plan teetering on the brink. She looked stunning, undeniably beautiful and composed in a dark emerald dress that highlighted her elegance. Valeria walked confidently, her head held high, drawing every eye in the room. Conversations hushed as guests admired her poise despite it being her ex's wedding. Jason's stomach knotted, his confidence wavering. He watched her navigate the crowd effortlessly, engaging in polite conversation. Her presence was commanding, and she was still the center of attention. But to Jason's surprise, she wasn't alone. The presence of a guest with Valeria piqued everyone's curiosity, but no one dared to ask her directly. Whispers and sideways glances filled the room. Who was this person with her? Jason wondered while watching the scene from behind the curtains. Who could it be? He thought, his mind racing. The knots in his stomach grew tighter with each passing second. He tried to shift his focus back to the ceremony, but his gaze kept drifting back to Valeria, unable to shake his anxiety. The mysterious guest remained by Valeria's side, exuding an air of confidence that unsettled Jason. The energy they brought into the room was palpable, making it harder for Jason to concentrate on his own wedding. Something about this felt off. Jason wanted to step out and find out about this guest right then and there, but the booming voice of the wedding planner stopped him in his tracks. "All right, everyone, let's get in position," she bellowed, requesting the wedding party to take their positions. Jason adjusted his suit, stealing one last glance at Valeria. The planner's bustling energy distracted him momentarily, providing clear directions and keeping everyone alert. Emily made her grand entrance, looking breathtaking in her ivory gown. The room hushed, all eyes turning towards her. For a moment even Jason's thoughts faded, replaced by a newfound admiration for Emily. His eyes were on his bride, but he couldn't fully shake the thoughts of Valeria away. As Emily approached the altar, his thoughts kept drifting back. Why did she bring someone? The ceremony proceeded with heartfelt vows and emotional speeches. Jason and Emily stood before each other, sharing promises for their future. Jason momentarily forgot his anxiety, lost in the significance of this life-changing event. The magnitude of marrying his best friend overshadowed his restless thoughts about Valeria, for now he is entirely focused on the joy of their union. Emily's smile was radiant, and her happiness was infectious, making Jason feel grateful to be starting this new chapter. The ceremony concluded with cheering and applause, and the newlyweds made their way down the aisle. At the reception, the atmosphere was festive and bustled with activities. The hall glimmered with lights, and the sound of laughter and clinking glasses filled the air. As the first dance came to a close, Jason noticed Valeria and her guest mingling comfortably with other guests, which added to his unease. Their ease and the way they blend into the surroundings set Jason on edge. Who is this person? He wonders, unable to shake his curiosity. During conversations, his eyes frequently search the room, looking for them. Every time he spots Valeria and her companion, his heart raced. Emily noticed his distraction but dismissed it as wedding day jitters, unaware of the turmoil inside him. The tension between Jason's curiosity and the joyous celebration became more and more palpable. Guests remained engrossed in festivities, chatting and dancing, while Jason's mind raced. Every moment shared with Emily felt overshadowed by the mystery he can't unravel. Near the end of the evening, Valeria and her guest approached the newlyweds to congratulate them. The sight sent a jolt through Jason, his heart pounding in his chest. The room held its breath as they drew nearer. Jason steeled himself, unsure of what to expect, but knowing the moment had arrived. This wedding was his silent revenge, a declaration that he had thrived without her. He wanted Valeria to see the life he had built, to feel a pang of regret for ever doubting him. As Valeria approached with her guest, Jason felt his pulse quicken. He was ready to bask in the validation he'd craved, but as they drew closer, Jason's confident facade crumbled. Valeria's guest stood beside Valeria, dressed impeccably and exuding a quiet confidence. But as soon as Jason's eyes met the mystery man, his face paled. This mystery man was none other than Emily's long-term ex-boyfriend. The realization hit him like a cold slap, unraveling the carefully constructed narrative he had built for this day. Emily's ex wasn't just any guest. He was the man she had once been set to marry. This was not what Jason expected at all. Emily's face mirrored Jason's shock, her smile faltering as recognition dawned. The moment was thick with tension, the festive air of the reception suddenly feeling heavy and awkward. Jason could see the discomfort in Emily's eyes, her composure wavering as she stood before her past and present colliding. Jason's meticulously planned showcase felt hollow now, overshadowed by the very presence of the man who had once been a part of Emily's future. The confidence Jason had felt moments ago drained from him entirely. Valeria, standing beside her partner, radiated a sense of calm and contentment that unsettled Jason. This wasn't the reaction he had expected. She wasn't envious or regretful. She seemed genuinely happy. unfazed by the spectacle he had crafted. Valeria's partner extended a polite congratulations, his presence towering over the moment, adding an unspoken tension. Jason felt dwarfed, not by his physical stature, but by the shadows of his own insecurity. Jason's plan had failed spectacularly, and he felt exposed. Emily's eyes flickered between Jason and her ex, the weight of the unexpected encounter pressing down on her. Emily turned angrily towards Jason and whispered, "Why would you invite him?" hurt flashing through her eyes. Jason's elaborate plan to flaunt his happiness had backfired, leaving him exposed and vulnerable. Reflecting on his obsession with Valeria, he knew he had messed up and jeopardized his beautiful beginning with Emily. As Jason stood there, the weight of his choices crashed down on him. His obsession with proving a point to Valeria had blinded him to the reality of his wedding day, the true joy of marrying Emily. In trying to one-up his ex, he had lost sight of what truly mattered. Regret clawed at him as he watched the confusion and hurt flicker across Emily's face. This day was supposed to be about them, a celebration of their love. But his fixation on Valeria had cast a shadow over everything, leaving Jason grappling with the consequences of his own actions. Emily's expression tightened, and she politely excused herself, her voice calm but strained. Jason hurried after her, his heart pounding, desperate to explain. He realized now, albeit too late, that he needed to let the past go and focus on his present and future. "Emily,"